When my lips touched that man, I forgot he was my uncle. Sounds wrong, doesn't it? But you haven't heard the full story yet. Behind that forbidden moment was a storm of emotions I never had the courage to face until now. If you think you're always in control of your heart, listen till the end. You just might change your mind. Before we begin, hit subscribe and leave a comment below. What would you do if the one thing you wanted most was the one thing you weren't allowed to have? My name is Rachel. I'm 22 years old, and if you asked me to define my life in one word, I'd probably say unsettled. I've been drifting for years between school cities and people ever since my parents split up when I was 15. Divorce has a way of cracking everything open, and not everything gets put back together. When my mother was diagnosed with a rare illness last fall and had to go abroad for treatment, I didn't have many options. Staying alone wasn't one of them. And so I packed up my things and moved in with her younger brother, my Uncle Jack. Jack lives with his new wife, Marilyn, in a small, snow-covered town tucked deep in the Colorado mountains. The kind of place where time moves slower and silence is louder. I hadn't seen Jack in years, but growing up, he had always been more than just an uncle. He was the one who taught me how to ride a bike, how to change a flat tire. He even helped me get my first car when I turned 18. When my dad left, Jack was the man who quietly filled the gap, not with big speeches or promises, but by showing up, again and again. So when Mom asked if I'd stay with him while she went through treatment, it felt safe, familiar, like coming home to something I didn't even realize I'd missed. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that this move would change everything. Because sometimes the places that feel the most familiar are where the most unexpected things happen. And sometimes the people you think you know best turn out to hold secrets you're not ready to see. Jack's house stood on a hill just outside of town. A wide porch wrapped around the front, and every window framed a view of endless pine trees buried in white. Inside, it was quiet, almost too quiet. The floors creaked gently under every step. The fireplace crackled like a whisper. Even the clock ticking in the hallway felt louder than it should. I stayed in the guest room on the second floor. Clean, neutral, untouched, like it had been waiting for someone but not me. Marilyn, Jack's wife, was polite, kind even, but cold in a way I couldn't quite explain. Her smiles never reached her eyes, and our conversations felt rehearsed. Jack, on the other hand, was warm, effortlessly. He'd knock on my door every morning to ask if I wanted coffee. He made sure I had everything I needed. And more than that, he seemed to care. I tried to keep to myself, head down, finish my semester stay out of their way. I thought this would be just another temporary stop in my drifting life. I was wrong. It started small. Jack offered to fix my laptop one afternoon when it suddenly froze during an online class. He sat beside me at the kitchen table, sleeves rolled up, eyes focused fingers, moving with quiet confidence. "You're still using the same password you had when you were 12, he said with a crooked smile. I laughed. Don't judge me. At least I'm consistent. That small moment, him remembering something so trivial, so specific, felt warmer than I expected. From that day on, little things kept happening. He left notes on the fridge. Good luck on your midterm. He brought me tea when I stayed up late studying, and every once in a while he'd knock on my door, not because he had to, but just to check in. It reminded me of being 8 years old, sitting on the curb, crying after my bike chain snapped. Jack was the one who showed up with a wrench and a juice box. He didn't ask what was wrong. He just fixed it and sat with me until I stopped crying. He'd always been that way. Steady, safe. And now, he was here again, still showing up. But something was different this time. I noticed it first in the way he looked at me. Not inappropriate, not wrong, just longer. Like he was trying to figure something out. Or maybe, like he saw something in me I hadn't even seen in myself. It didn't make me uncomfortable. In fact, that's what scared me the most. Because it felt familiar. It felt wanted. And I didn't know what to do with that feeling. Then came the little touches. His hand on my back as I passed him in the hallway. His fingers brushing mine when we reached for the same mug. We never talked about it. But the air between us changed. It buzzed, like static before a storm. One night, Marilyn went out to dinner with some friends. The snow was falling thick outside. I was curled up on the couch with a blanket and a book. Jack came into the living room, holding 2 mugs of hot cocoa. "Thought you could use this," he said, handing me one. I smiled. "You always know." He sat in the armchair across from me, but after a few minutes, he moved to the couch. Closer. Not too close, but close enough. The fireplace flickered softly. Shadows danced on the walls. We talked about my classes, about Colorado winters, about the time he and Mom got caught sneaking out of the house when they were teenagers. I laughed harder than I had in weeks, and for a while everything felt simple. At one point, I looked over and found him watching me. Not just looking, watching. His gaze was steady, curious, warm. I felt my cheeks heat up. What I asked, trying to sound casual. He shook his head slowly, smiling. "Nothing. You just remind me of someone." I didn't ask who. A minute passed. Then he reached out and gently brushed something from my hair. "Snowflake," he said. "Must have blown in when you came in earlier." His fingers lingered for a beat too long. I didn't move. Neither did he. Our eyes met. And in that moment, it felt like something had been said, without either of us speaking. The snow had been falling since morning. Thick, silent, endless. Marilyn had left earlier to meet a friend in town, some kind of book club, I think. The house was quiet, dim. I walked upstairs to grab my charger. As I passed Jack's room, I noticed the door wasn't fully closed, just cracked slightly. Something about that sliver of space drew me in. I paused, listened. Inside, it was still peaceful. Jack was lying on his back, one arm resting behind his head. His breathing was deep, steady. The soft gray light from the window fell across his face, casting gentle shadows over his jaw, his cheekbones the rise of his chest. For a moment, I just stood there, watching him, and I felt calm. No thoughts, no confusion, just stillness. My hand brushed the edge of a dresser near the door, and a small ceramic bowl tipped and hit the hardwood floor with a soft clink. Jack stirred. His eyes opened slowly. They met mine almost immediately. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then with a soft, sleepy smile, he said, "Rachel, what are you doing here?" My voice caught in my throat. I was just... I gestured vaguely toward the hallway. "I didn't mean to wake you." He sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes. "It's okay," he said gently. "You can come in, if you want." I hesitated, but my feet moved before I could think. I sat at the edge of the bed, a careful distance between us. We didn't speak for a moment. Then I said softly, "Do you ever feel like you're floating through life and no one really sees you?" Jack looked at me, something flickering in his eyes. "Yeah," he said. "More than I'd like to admit." I let out a quiet breath. Lately, it just feels like I'm invisible, even to myself. Jack didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached up and gently tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers were warm, steady. "You're not invisible," he said. Not to me. The room felt smaller, warmer. I turned to face him. Our eyes locked. Slowly, carefully, I leaned in just a few inches, and he didn't pull away. His breath brushed my cheek. I closed my eyes, and when our lips met, it was like the world exhaled. The kiss was soft, barely there. My heart was racing, but my hands were still. It didn't feel reckless or rushed. It felt inevitable. His hand moved to my cheek thumb, brushing lightly against my skin. My hand found his. I held it, pressed it. His fingers tightened around mine. I could feel his pulse, fast, matching mine. The kiss deepened, still slow, still delicate, but with something simmering underneath. Longing, regret, a kind of hunger that had nothing to do with the body and everything to do with the soul. In my mind, 1,000 alarms were ringing, but in that moment, I couldn't hear any of them. I felt his other hand at my waist, not forceful, not urgent, just present. As if saying, "I'm here. I feel it too." I pulled back slightly, our foreheads resting together, our breaths mixed in the space between us. "This isn't right," I whispered. Jack closed his eyes. "No," he said, "but it doesn't feel wrong either." The silence returned, thick, heavy charged. I looked at him again, really looked, and I knew. Whatever this was, it had already begun long before our lips met. We just hadn't said it out loud until now. The front door creaked open downstairs. A rush of cold air followed, and then Jack Rachel Marilyn's voice. Instantly, I froze. Jack's hand dropped from my waist. We pulled apart so quickly it felt like we'd both been burned. I stumbled backward, heart hammering against my ribs. Jack stood up, running a hand through his hair. His face had gone pale. I heard footsteps climbing the stairs, slow, steady, unaware. I wanted to vanish, to melt into the walls, but there was no time. A soft knock. Then the door opened. Marilyn stood there, holding a tote bag, wearing her winter coat, a scarf still wrapped loosely around her neck. She looked between us. Her eyes scanned the room. The closeness, the tension. Jack standing stiff, me flushed, trembling, trying not to cry. Silence stretched out unbearable. Finally, Marilyn spoke. Her voice was quiet, even. "What's going on in here?" Not a scream, not an accusation, just a question. And somehow that made it worse. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I looked at Jack, but he said nothing. Marilyn's gaze settled on him. For a long moment, she said nothing either. And then a breath. A blink. Her shoulders softened. Her voice dropped almost like she was talking to herself. "There are things," she said softly, "that neither of you understand yet." My throat tightened. I expected fury, rage, betrayal. But what I saw on Marilyn's face wasn't anger. It was sadness, a kind of weary, quiet sorrow that made my chest ache. She looked at me one last time, then back at Jack. She stepped inside, placed her bag gently on the dresser. "I'll be downstairs," she said. Then she turned and walked out. No slamming doors, no screaming. Just the soft click of the door closing behind her. And the silence she left behind was deafening. The silence in the room stretched on for what felt like hours. Jack sat on the edge of the bed, elbows resting on his knees, head in his hands. I stood by the window, arms crossed tightly against my chest, staring out at the falling snow. Neither of us spoke. Because what could we possibly say? The warmth from earlier had vanished, replaced by a hollow ache. My heart still raced, but not from desire this time. It was from shame. The air between us was thick with the weight of what we'd done. Not just the kiss, not just the touch, but the knowing. The fact that we had crossed the line, even if just for a moment, and now we couldn't uncross it. Rachel. Jack's voice was hoarse, low. I didn't turn around. What happens now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jack let out a breath, slow and shaky. I don't know, he said. I really don't. I finally turned to face him. He looked broken, not angry, not defensive, just deeply painfully lost. I shouldn't feel anything he said, but I do. His words hit me like ice, because I felt it too, and that was the worst part. I didn't mean for this to happen, I said. I wasn't trying to. Jack shook his head. Don't, he said softly. Don't pretend it didn't mean something, because it did. I nodded slowly, but it doesn't mean it was right. A long pause. Then Jack looked up at me. His eyes were tired, wet. We were both lonely, he said, both trying to fill something we didn't understand. I sat down on the floor beside the bed knees pulled to my chest. I think I've been lost for so long, I whispered that anything that felt warm. I just ran toward it. He was quiet for a moment. Same. The clock ticked somewhere down the hall. The snow kept falling. We can't go back, I said finally. No, Jack replied. But we don't have to go forward either. Not like this. I looked up at him. So what do we do? Jack stood slowly, walked to the window where I'd stood just minutes before. We stop, he said. We step back, and we try to understand what this really was. I felt a tear slip down my cheek, not from heartbreak, but from something heavier. Accountability. We didn't lie to each other. We didn't excuse what happened. We named it, faced it, and that was the first real step forward. It wasn't love, not the kind that lasts or the kind that heals. It was two people, each lost in their own shadows, reaching for something warm in the dark. And for a brief moment we touched. Then we let go. Not because we didn't feel something, but because feeling something doesn't always mean you're meant to hold on to it. Some connections come to test us, not to complete us. Some moments are meant to wake us up, not carry us forward. And real growth comes when you choose to walk away, even when every part of you wants to stay. That's what this was. A reminder that desire isn't destiny, and that sometimes loving yourself means letting go of what feels good but leads nowhere. The kiss has long passed, but its echo still lingers, long after the snow has melted. Have you ever felt something so strong, so confusing, it left you questioning who you really are? Share your story in the comments. Your voice might help someone else feel less alone. And if this story touched something deep within you, subscribe to the channel for more true stories that stir the heart, challenge the mind, and make you feel less alone in your own complexity. Sometimes it's the stories that make us the most uncomfortable, that end up teaching us the most about ourselves.